Then we're going to start, everybody. We are recording. Thank you for hitting yourselves on mute. Greetings. I am Scott Hansen, aka Norge, aka Little Norge, aka the other Norge. Welcome to Sanka and Celebrations, a virtual remembering of Brent Christianson's ministry at the Lutheran Campus Center in Madison. Speaker viewing might be your best option for tonight. We're going to have some little viewers speak up in and out. We're going to be going to hear stories from our peers, hear some of Brent's own words, sing a little bit, and play some Brent trivia before we go into breakout rooms to meet our old friends. When we started this endeavor, CDC guidelines weren't encouraging in-person meetings, but now that tide is starting to turn, and maybe after tonight you'll make plans to see some of these old friends face to face and share your memories all over again. So please remember to put yourselves on mute as best you can. Sit back, we're gonna have a great little remembrance tonight. Now, as our memories return to the Lutheran Campus Center, I'd like to first introduce the current director of the Lutheran Campus Center, Pastor Emily Twitty. Nailed it.
You did a great job, Scott. Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Emily Twitty, the person in the unenviable position of trying to fill Brent's shoes at Lutheran Campus Ministry. It's rare to come into an organization following someone whose tenure was as long and as rich as Brent's was at LCM. And although I didn't get the opportunity to get to know Brent very well during his life, I feel blessed to have gotten to know him better by learning about the meaningful ways that he's shaped the lives of the countless students he met in his 21 years at LCM. Tonight, I want to especially say thank you to the planning team that's worked so hard to put this event together, and for those of you who shared memories and reflections for the program tonight. And I also wanted to say thank you to the many alumni and friends who've given gifts in Brent's honor to support this ministry over the past year. On behalf of the organization and the students we serve, I say thank you for your support. And finally, I'm just so grateful that you are a part of the extended community that's bound together through time and space, through our shared experience with campus ministry at UW-Madison. So thanks so much for taking the time to gather tonight and for the privilege of hearing about Brent's wonderful ministry. Thanks.
Thank you, Pastor Emily. Now, many of us met Pastor Brent at the LCC and might have thought he had always been there. We were so young. Let's hear from somebody who helped match Brent to the LCC. Sue Rothmeyer, Secretary of the ELCA, Office of the Presiding Bishop, former National Director of Campus Ministry.
Standing here in front of the Campus Ministry Center, I'm reminded of the hours I spent in this building, not only taking part in campus ministry activities, but also writing my graduate thesis. It was on one of my breaks from writing that I was talking with my campus pastor, Phil, knowing that I was pondering what next in life. Phil looked at me that day and said, "Have you thought about campus ministry?" I've been thinking about it ever since. For 10 years, I thought about it at Iowa State University, where I served as the lay campus minister. Phil, now serving on the ELCA church-wide staff in campus ministry, called one day and asked me another question. Would I serve as chaplain for new staff orientation? And who was a member of that class? None other than Brent Christianson from Illinois State University. I remember bonding with him over our shared alma mater at Luther College and recall the wisdom and wit, prophetic prose and poetry that he shared during those days. In a few years, I was thinking about campus ministry as a member of the church-wide campus ministry team, and Brent was thinking about campus ministry here at the University of Wisconsin, giving us even more opportunities to connect. During that time, the campus ministry mission statement read that the purpose of campus ministry was to assist those in academic settings to discover and fulfill their sense of vocation. As I stand here, I'm reminded how true that was for me. And for those of you taking part in this celebration of Brent's life, I know that many of you could share stories of the ways in which Brent assisted you in discovering your sense of vocation. I'm standing in front of one such student. Teresa Palumbo is not only a great videographer, she also lived out her vocation on the church-wide staff as a Lutheran student movement intern and continues to live out her vocation at the Wiseman Center and in ministry at Messiah Lutheran. We all could share stories of the impacts Brent's wit and wisdom, prophetic prose and poetry had on us. In the words of Brent and my alma mater's motto, Soli Deo Gloria, to God alone be the glory, and thanks for the life and service of our beloved friend and faithful servant, Brent Christianson.
Thank you, Sue. What was it like to be among the first students to meet Brent before he was installed? It might have gone something like this, according to Ryan Anderson and Nate Blair.
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Anderson, and I went to the Lutheran Campus Center in the early 90s. In fact, I was one of the first people who met Pastor Brent Christianson, but it was under very interesting circumstances. You see, we had Pastor Widmark, our interim pastor of the Campus Center, and we were trying to figure out who was going to be the next Lutheran Campus Ministry pastor. And so that individual supposedly was going to be joining us for the Wednesday night worship, and he was going to be introduced to all of us. And as I looked around the room with my twin brother, we kept thinking to ourselves, now who possibly could be the Lutheran campus pastor? And we saw a couple of people that we thought might fit the bill, but then we saw a third person who had long hair, and I remember my brother elbowing me in the side saying, can't possibly be that guy. He looks like a homeless person. Well, needless to say, during the worship service, we continued to wonder who was going to be the Lutheran campus pastor. And at the end of the service, none other than Pastor Brent Christianson, the homeless person, was introduced as our new campus pastor. I'll never forget that. And that reminds me of the type of person that Pastor Brent Christianson was. He was an open person, a kind person, a caring person. Maybe he didn't, at least in our minds, fit who we thought was going to be the campus pastor, but because of his openness and welcomeness and his ministry, he was one of the best campus pastors that the Lutheran Campus Center has ever had.
Greetings from Colorado. My name is Nate Blair, and I was active at the LCC from about fall of 1992 until off and on until 2002. And I was actually on the hiring committee that brought Pastor Brent to the LCC. Pastor Brent was a big part of my faith life for a long time, and I've lost two great preachers that I knew to cancer. One was Pastor Brent, the other was my dad. So greetings from Colorado. I'm sorry I can't be with you. My son graduates from 5th grade at the exact same time, so probably won't be able to participate, but wanted to send greetings. Anyway, enjoy the festivities and have a great time.
A big part of Brent's impact was, of course, his sermons. John Hansen, Norge himself, recalls this.
Hi, John Hansen here. I graduated from Wisconsin in 1995, and Pastor Brent was a fantastic person and so meaningful to me. On one level, he taught me a very important lesson, that Lutherans can be cool. which was a shock to me growing up in Toma that church could be so much fun. Part of what made him so exuberant and dynamic was the freedom he gave his hands to help communicate his heartfelt messages.
Yeah, haven't had this same kind of trouble today with my Zoom. I don't know what's going on here.
The audience that he was speaking, teenagers who
No, I know that. I'm trying to get it on my computer
wanted
first.
a message. And his words also seemed to be memorized, which I found also fascinating and liberating. That what I knew was a prepared message seemed like an extemporaneous speech. It was almost like magic. Pastor Brent was such a complex and deep man. And I know for a fact he helped me be a better person, and so many others, and contributed to some of the best memories I have in my whole life.
Well put. Along with his sermons, it was hard not to notice Brent's love of words. Ryan Panzer takes a classic look at Brent's poem, or a look at a classic Brent poem, either way. And a lot of us unsure kids walked into the LCC, and if we were lucky, some of us left with at least 1 foot trespassing into adulthood. Some even took a path to ministry, like Reverend Kristen Engstrom.
My name is Ryan Panzer. I'm a 2011 alum of Lutheran Campus Ministry. Worked with Brent on the Student Coordinating Committee from 2007 to 2011. And throughout that time, had a lot of really important business meetings that would happen at Dottie Dumplings, a place where we would sometimes get through the agenda items we had to discuss, but always have fascinating conversations on everything from what God was up to the campus community, to politics, to the Packers. Brent was an important mentor in my journey and in my discernment to eventually attend Luther Seminary. He's someone I always consider a great friend. I'm going to read an excerpt from his poem of Stardust and Ashes. It's a poem that he read every Wednesday at Ash Wednesday. I remember my freshman year thinking, well, this is kind of long, and it is, and that's why I'm only going to read an excerpt. But by the time I'd heard this for the 4th time as a senior, it really stuck with me. I read it still to this day every year on Ash Wednesday as a reminder that indeed all of us are stardust and ashes, but we're beloved and blessed stardust and ashes. We are creatures of stardust and ashes and stardust. Our lives orbit and move, flow and fall, settle and send. The life and the lives that we have and share and lose and choose or have chosen for us in the presence of particles, small as non-being and as large as the cosmos. A cosmos for creatures of stardust and ashes. We are creatures of stardust and ashes and stardust. We are creatures whose lives flow from God's hidden mind and the dust of the earth. We are creatures whose futures will be in God's heart and the soil of the ground. We are creatures whose mouths sigh in ecstasy, cry in pain, whose minds create beauty and weapons, whose hearts beat in hatred and love, whose lives move in awe and in boredom, whose love flows like water and lava, whose work can bring wholeness and sin, whose hopes can be noble and petty, whose scope can be worldwide and bound to go no farther outward than the skin we inhabit, creatures of stardust and ashes. We are creatures of stardust and ashes and stardust. God is a God of stardust and ashes and stardust. The wind of the Spirit stirs stardust and ashes and mixes them up and breathes life into dry lungs and sets us all here and gives us each other and bread, wine, and water and makes us our stardust a bright shining sun and makes of our ashes a rich fruitful garden. It makes of our present the dwelling of God. It makes of our future the place where God dwells. Amen.
Hi, I'm Kristen Engstrom, and I was at the Lutheran Campus Center at UW-Madison from 1998 to 2002. When I started to frequent the Lutheran Campus Center during my sophomore year at UW, I came with lots of questions and a need to belong. and Pastor Brent played a huge role in responding to both of those. I hadn't yet quite found my people and my place on campus. But at the LCC, I immediately found two faith leaders, Brent and Lori, who took me in from the moment I crept through the front doors. They made sure I knew that I could drink as much coffee as I needed or wanted, that I could pop popcorn for my supper, and that I could stay as late as I needed to catch up on my studies. It never felt like they were in charge, more that they were there to guide and support and welcome us over and over again. Yet as I became more serious about figuring out what I believed, and what Lutherans believed amongst the many voices and theologies I was running into on campus, Pastor Brent was always ready to welcome and respond to my questions. I would usually catch him in his office. It seemed safer that way. And upon hearing that I had a question, he would swivel his chair to face the door and bring his hands together and help me make sense of my wonderings, at least for the moment. Other times he would invite me in to take a seat in his office and unearth more questions for me to contemplate. But never once was I made to feel stupid or bothersome. And it was Pastor Brent's constant nagging, or what I suppose I should call support and encouragement, that got me into the alb of an assisting minister who had to pray out loud during worship, something that freaked me out to no end. And then eventually that opened the door for me to contemplate a possible call to ordained pastoral ministry. I didn't want to be a pastor. I told this to Pastor Brent over and over again, because they weren't regular people. They were too goody-goody, I assumed. They had to write sermons and be public about their faith. I, in college, wanted to be cool, something I was not, but I certainly did not want to be a religious nerd. But Pastor Brent showed me with his life that to be a person of faith isn't about any of the categories or stereotypes we place upon ourselves or on others. And it certainly isn't about being some sort of super Christian. It's more about claiming and celebrating who God has created each of us to be, with all the questions we bring, with our gifts and our abilities and our doubts and our struggles, and one another.
And now for something completely different. It's time for a bit of Brent trivia. We're going to do all the questions, and then later we'll do the answers. You'll just have to enter your answers into the little pop-up, submit them when you're done. You should see the trivia in just a little bit. No big deal. There's no prizes. It's just for fun. So let's see if we can get the trivia. Oh, here we go. It's trivia time, everybody. So again, fill these out. Click submit at the very, very end. And in about 10, 15 minutes, we'll come back and review the answers, see how well you did. Number one, how many years did Brent serve as pastor at the LCC? Multiple choice, 17, 21, 30. What was Brent's favorite lunch place for business? There might have been spoilers, Bratz, Union South, or Dottie's. 3, what was Brent's name for the local Madison newspapers? Earmuffs Children, the Crap Times, the Wisconsin State Urinal, the Wiki Litmus, or multiple choices. 4, what time did Holden evening prayer start at LM on Sunday night and why? 9:09, because we were all watching X-Files. 9:09, because we were all watching The Practice. 8:09, because we were all studying. 5, Pastor Brent served delicious homemade soup and bread each Monday for soup. What does the S stand for? Multiple choices. You can go with soup, shared, or salad. 6 is the halfway mark. Pastor Brent wears kilt to events. What was the family name associated with? McLaren, Fraser, or Mackenzie? Brent would start their sermon by saying, brothers and sisters in Christ, sisters and brothers in Christ, greetings and salutations or combinations. Which area of the LCC did Brent refer to as his prayer closet, the kitchen, the good bathroom, or his office? Number 9, almost there. Brent would often be spotted wearing what clothing items in fall and winter walks? The tam o' shanter, the Birkenstocks with the socks, something Becky knit, or all the above? And last question, what was Brent's favorite theologian? Martin Marty, Douglas John Hall, or Richard Rohr? So again, you have plenty of time to fill those out. Fill out your answers. Click submit at the bottom. We'll be back later in the service to kind of look and see how we all did. Meanwhile, let's take another big turn here. A classic college theme is worrying about finding yourself. And what about worrying about finding your someone? Here's Carrie Willard.
Hi, I'm Carrie Willard. I was Carrie Klitsky at the Lutheran Campus Center. I graduated from UW-Madison in 1999, so I know a lot of you were there before me, and a lot of you were there after me, but a lot of you probably had similar experiences to me with Brent and the Lutheran Campus Center. Like a lot of you, I came from a small town. And like a lot of you, I was really young when I got to Madison, and I was kind of full of myself when I got to Madison. And Brent never tore me down, but he offered a nice context to view the world. And I remember coffee, a lot of coffee and Oreos and popcorn at the Lutheran Campus Center. I remember eating beautiful soup that Brent had made for us and really feeling at home there. And I'm sure a lot of you experienced that as well. But what I remember the most are the conversations that we had with Brent on burnt orange, coffee stained couches. And one of those conversations that I remember was about soulmates and who are we supposed to marry? And what if we miss meeting the one? And I don't know if it's because we were children of the 80s and 90s that watched too many rom-coms, or what kind of very serious self-reflection we were undertaking at the time. But Brent let us know that he didn't think it really mattered. And this was shocking to me. I think it was shocking to a lot of us. And he said, what really matters is that I found someone who loves me and I love her. And that's all that matters. And God has blessed our marriage. And so it doesn't really matter if there's a one person out there for everyone, because I found my one person, and that's good enough. And it's wonderful. So that's one of those very serious conversations that I remember about Brent. And I hope for all of you that you can reflect on those memories and still find people in your life who can reflect with you and take your very serious conversations seriously with you, maybe injected with some humor in the way that Brent did, and reflect God's love for you in the way that Brent did for all of us.
I was on mute. Life is not just confined to the lessons from just the preaching. Here are some stories on real college life from Camille, Elise, Molly, and Rob.
Hello, LCC community. My name is Camille Conway. One of the stories that I shared on the Facebook page was in 2003. We went up to the Boundary Waters, and the weather can change very quickly. And it's also very cold the first part of May up there, but there are no mosquitoes. And so that's a definite bonus. And it's still very beautiful up there. But we managed to have 2/3 of our boat, of the canoes, capsize on Rose Lake. So some weather blew in quickly. It was raining. I can very distinctly remember Brent's yellow rain suit that he was wearing. And I can also distinctly remember his face. He was in the back steering. I was in the front. And Amy Hartsoe was duffing in the middle. And I can remember his face as it was clear that our boat was going to go over and there was nothing. Sorry, canoe. He would be very mad that I called it a boat. Our canoe capsized. And he told us not to swim, to stay with the boat. And that was really, really smart advice to save our strength. We got blown into the shore. Like I said, 2/3 of the canoes had also flipped. So we all kind of gathered on the shore, made a fire. We were able to get dry clothes out. We only lost one of our packs. So that was pretty great. So we had enough warm clothes for everybody. And then we drank warm Tang to warm up. And friendships for life were formed. And, pretty great survival skills were also learned during that time. One of the things that I learned from that experience and that I take with me, I work in healthcare. It's been a very dynamic time to be in healthcare. And it's that the leader in a group sets the tone for the people who are there. And if the leader doesn't have it under control or doesn't have a plan, other people can pick up on that fairly quickly. And Brent was confident. He had a plan. He knew how to help us. And we were all safe. We have a great story now. Brent definitely gave me a huge love of the outdoors, a huge love of the Boundary Waters. And I'm forever grateful.
It's difficult to overestimate how significant a role Brent had in my life. Just putting aside what he did for my faith and aside the community of friends and literal family I made at the LCC, if we put aside all the people that I found my life through because of the community at the LCC, and just talk about the man for a second, I can recall 2 moments where Brent literally changed the course of my life by holding up the most poetic mirror. I don't think the details of the moments are what make them so wondrous, because I'm fairly certain he did this for pretty regularly for most of the young adults in his flock. But he could do this thing where he would just sit and listen. He would digest your problem. He wouldn't trivialize it, even though I'm sure he heard every woe for 200 times before. But when he was done and he had heard you, he would offer an analogy, something visual that would help you know that he saw you, and then at the same time be a balm for whatever wound you had. He didn't offer solutions, but he would help me see myself from a different perspective and help me untangle the knot with what I already had. And every time he did it, it felt like magic, even though in the end it was just poetry.
As someone who grew up feeling like a perpetual outsider, weirdo theater kid, I can say that with Pastor Brent, I always felt like I was okay and that I belonged. And, whether I was having a good day or a bad day, whether I stayed awake for his sermon or not, I just always got the sense that I was welcome and that I mattered and that he cared. And I think that's the thing that has really stuck with me the most throughout the years. It's just how much Brent really cared about each one of us. And it's really set the tone for me in terms of what I can expect from a pastor and the qualities that I look for.
When I was a freshman, the outreach ministry of the campus center was pretty robust for incoming students. So cookies were delivered to my dorm room, and I got lots of stuff in the mail, and there was a welcome pig roast, for example. But despite all of that, I didn't come that often to church. It just wasn't a priority for me, and I would just forget. And the truth is, I probably would have just drifted away. Except that one day after worship, Brent came up to me, cornered me, and said, you know, how do you want to become involved? Not whether, but how. And, you know, do you want to join a committee? Do you want to join the choir? And I didn't want to do any of that, of course, but I said I would join the choir. I needed that push from him. And once he did that, all of a sudden I had a reason to be there every week. And I was part of a community. And that community is where I formed my most enduring friendships. It's where I would eventually meet the woman I would marry, and with whom I've got 2 great kids. It's where I really formed an understanding of God that I just hadn't had before. And so all of these good things, every good thing in my life, really, I can trace back to that moment when Brent really pushed me, gave me the push I needed to become part of this community, and I'm so grateful for that.
We are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. See a Habakkuk and Pentecost. 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 See a Habakkuk, see a Habakkuk, see a Habakkuk and Pentecost. See a Habakkuk, see a Habakkuk, see a Habakkuk and Pentecost.
Wonderful. Okay, everyone. Let's see if we can get those trivia answers in. Check the answers and just go ahead and mash them one time. Teresa, are we gonna be able to close the polling and vote? Here we go. We have answers. How many years did Brent serve? 21. Brent's favorite lunch place? That was your spoiler, Dottie's. Brent's name for the local Madison papers? The Times and the Wisconsin State, you know what. X-Files was big. Guys, it was a long time ago. X-Files was huge. Number 5, S stand for shared. Shared observances, utterances, and perspectives. Love a good acronym. Number 6, the McLaren family. Scottish representing right there. Brent would start by saying brothers and sisters or sisters and brothers in Christ. There is some debate. Might have been a shift in time, but we're Lutherans. We're not going to fight over it. They can both be right. Brent's prayer closet was the good bathroom, and there was a difference. And finally, you could see Brent wearing the tam o' shanter, something bicking it, and the Birkenstocks with the wool socks. He would not be talked out of it. I don't know if he thought there was really good grip on the ice, but that was a look. And finally, who was Brent's favorite theologian? Douglas John Hall. Thank you for playing trivia, everybody. I hope you did well. Hope you had fun seeing how well you know Brent. Okay, next up. Even though Christ's love is universal, Brent wasn't above sports tribalism. I think he enjoyed sharing the laments of being a fan. Here is Reverend Kirsten Fryer and a counterpoint by Kristen Radke Carroll.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten Fryer. I graduated in 2005 and coming to you today from St. Paul, Minnesota. I am the supposed Viking fan. Not quite sure that I'd agree with Brent on that one, even now still living in Minnesota. But I am the inspiration for Brent's poem, Packer Fans Always Say We. I remember vividly standing at the door of Brent's office where I spent so much time during my time at the LCC. All of those very important conversations that happened in that doorway. Adam Erickson and I were standing there talking with Brent, and I did ask the question, how come you guys always say we, referring to Packers fans? Which resulted eventually in Brent's poem, which included, folks here in Wisconsin, when football is starting, are wondering how we will be. When we speak of Green Bay, we never say they, because Packers fans always say we. As I think about this poem and what it means, it's not about Packers or Vikings or, heaven forbid, the Bears, but about the way that Brent taught us how we say we, how we were welcomed in to that space from the very first time that we walked in until graduation and beyond. How we were welcomed no longer as students, but as friends, and I am so blessed to say colleagues. Brent taught all of us that no matter who we are, where we were coming from, who we cheered for, that in Christ we were welcome and that we could always say we.
For Pastor Brent, it is only fitting that I do this in my Viking attire given the rivalry we had when I was a student at the LCC. What does the LCC and Pastor Brent mean to me? Brent and Lori made the LCC so welcoming for all. When I think of the LCC, I think of fellowship, Wednesday worship, lifelong friendships, cost supper, and studying upstairs, and maybe an occasional nap. Wednesday worship and cost supper were vital every week during my college career. On the rare weeks I had to miss worship and cost supper, my week felt off. Even after sitting in lectures all day, Pastor Brent always managed a sermon that hit home and was to the point. He had an amazing way of connecting with every student and assisting them on their way to graduation and adulthood.
Martin Luther was famous for dispensing wisdom during his table talks. I think Brent very much liked to get away from the pulpit and just let it rip. Here is a Brent Table Talk All-Star, Adam Erickson.
Hello, my name is Adam Erickson, and I was active at the LCC as a student from 2000 to 2004. Food and drink played an incredibly important role in the development of my relationship with Pastor Brent, both as a student and after. There was Monday soup and Wednesday cost suppers, to be sure, but there were also plenty of times that we shared a meal or some drinks outside of those events. For example, and this is unexpected, I didn't expect my pastor to take me out on my 21st birthday to ensure that I drank good beer, not the Miller Lite swill that I was accustomed to. I also never expected my pastor to take me to an oyster bar in Panama City, Florida. As we walked in, we were greeted by a guy named Bubba who said, "Y'all here for them frog legs? Them frog legs are good." Now, while we did not partake of the frog legs, Brent introduced me to oysters on the half shell piled high with horseradish sauce. I can guarantee you, I won't make that mistake again. You know, it's also quite possible that I wouldn't be married if it weren't for Brent. When I was working in the area as a youth director, I also worked part-time as the LCC's interim office manager. And in that position, I was responsible for monitoring the financial status of the ministry. And because Brent was the director, we felt that it was responsible of us to make sure that we met at least weekly. Sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, and always at the place that we affectionately referred to as the temple, otherwise known as Dottie's Dumpling Dowry. Anyway, one Friday, Brent set up an appointment with one of the new pastors in town, a cute young woman from Nebraska in her first call. And he set the meeting for 11 a.m. and made sure that it went past noon. So we had to invite her because otherwise it would be rude, right? So Sarah joined us for lunch, and fast forward to today, and we will be married for 9 years this year. My life would look very differently if it weren't for Brent's this time intentional wordiness that caused a meeting to go long, and I can't thank him enough for it. As I said before, food and drink played important roles in our relationship. Through all the meals, all the Lake Louis Scotch ales, and all the conversation, we laughed, we gossiped, we complained, not that anybody cared about our complaints. We supported each other and we challenged each other. Brent became not only my pastor, but my friend. So, here's to you, Brent. I don't have access to a Lake Louis today, but I will raise this Sierra Nevada to you and say thank you. So, as the video said, my name is Adam Erickson, and as you saw in one of the trivia questions, there was a space that was very important to Brent that he referred to as his prayer closet. And it's possible that this was said in jest, but I want to make sure the bases are covered. And so tonight, I am excited to officially announce and dedicate the Christianson prayer closet at the Lutheran Campus Center. Brent always said that Jerry Nockey got a library, he wanted the prayer closet. So Brent, the prayer closet is yours.
Well put. All right, and now everyone, we'll hear from 2 people that are synonymous to the LCC, in my opinion. The chair of all chairs, Teresa Palumbo herself, and our campus minister, Lori Fox Petrov.
When I think back about my college experience at UW-Madison, without a doubt, I would say that my entire experience on campus was defined by my involvement in campus ministry. I'm so grateful that I walked through those front doors my freshman year, because I walked in and I never left. And so much of that is in part because of the community that Pastor Brent and Lori cultivated and shepherded. You know, they were always there. They were always encouraging us to be involved, and just they were so present in our life. I mean, I think I saw Pastor Brent and Lori more than I saw my own roommates while I was in college, because of how often I was at the campus center and how often they were there. And, you know, because it wasn't just a place to study. It wasn't just a place to get free food or popcorn or coffee. It really was the community. We came because of the people. We came because of Pastor Brent and Lori. And in that time in college, I, like many others, was struggling with my faith and trying to wrestle with my image of God. And Pastor Brent was so instrumental in walking with me on that journey. And every Wednesday, his sermons just stirred our hearts and our minds, and just was a constant reminder of God's unending love for us and God's grace. And I'm just so grateful to him for that. And I think it's a real testament to say that we became a church family. How many of us we're still in contact with Pastor Brent and Becky and Lori, because it went beyond just a campus pastor. And, you know, honestly, Brent is always going to be my pastor. So his fingerprints are all over my life and contributed significantly to the person that I am today. And I'm forever grateful.
Howdy, Lori here. Hey, Becky. Hey, Johanna and Leah and Lisbeth. I'm going to greet you in Brent's words. At the beginning of every worship, or every one of Brent's sermons, he would start with brothers and sisters. But what you might not know is that he also had a special, unique sound effect as he nervously jingled the coins and the keys in his pocket. But we teased him enough that he had to make a point to empty out his pockets before he came to worship. However, and luckily, he never stopped using the term brothers and sisters. He was so right. He was so right to continually remind us, as the Native American brothers and sisters do, that we are all related. We are all related. That's such a gift that we need to seriously be reminded of time and time again. All humans, animals, minerals, I'm sure there's many more elements in this world that we are related to. Now, I'm going to digress and say, for Brent, some of those minerals included coffee, beer, and basil. Brent was incredibly talented. He could do it all. But as a campus pastor, he honored the amazing gifts of all the university community. Our student committees, the Good News Singers, the choirs, the boards. And I have to give a special shout out to all of those many Wednesday night dinner dishwashers. You volunteered your time and your heart. You were campus ministry. Brent was there to make us all stronger. That was his gift. But he wasn't always perfect. Sometimes at staff meetings or at wine and cheeses, if you hummed a song or sang the first line of a favorite rock and roll song, which is all I could ever do, somehow Brent always knew that song, and he would take off. He proceeded to sing it all 4 verses, or how many verses? After the 4th verse, I'd start to roll my eyes. Actually, it was after the 2nd verse. But Brent was in his zone. There was no stopping him. There's one staff meeting that I'll never forget. Brent, Bonnie, Lee, and I were talking about outreach. I was jealous of the groups that could do things on Library Mall. And I wanted to do something big outside, and maybe with Badger ice cream. And in a flash, Brent said, banana splits. And immediately following that, Bonnie Lee said, gutters. It was just like magic. Poof. Our welcome week biggest banana split on campus happened. The last time I saw Brent, he was wearing his electric blue sweater. The lights were bright, and they reflected from his sweater to his silver hair and his mustache. I stood back and marveled. Brent sparkled. And I'm sure he still does. I'll close in the traditional way. The banquet continues. Right here and wherever you may be, the banquet continues for Brent, and the banquet continues for all of us, brothers and sisters. Wherever we are, the banquet continues.
I feel so blessed to have had Brent in my life and to have that legacy of him today.
Thank you, Pastor Brent, for your fellowship.
Thank you, Pastor Brent. Thank you for being a support in my life, for being a pastor for me, and for opening up a path I would have never imagined for myself as a pastor. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Brent.
So thank you, Pastor Brent.
And now for the final word from Brent himself, the Sanka Blues.
Now you have decaffeinated coffee, and one of the best things Paul Calhoun gave me was a button that said decaffeinated for what purpose? Then you know it, sing along. Can we get Pat McCurdy to sing this? I woke up Monday morning, I was feeling low in me. All I had was Sanka coffee, I couldn't get my caffeine. So damn you, Sanka. You're 97% unclean. All I got is Sanka coffee, all I need is some caffeine. I went into a restaurant, I was looking all around. Was some half-drunk cups of coffee there, and I started to eat the grounds. But it was Sanka. Oh, it was 97% unclean. sink of coffee. All I need is some caffeine. Oh, I went to the organic place, some coffee fortified. They served organic Senka there. I nearly lost my mind. Drinking Senka. It's 97% unclean. All I got is Senka coffee. All I need is some caffeine. Oh, I bought a cup at the U of M. I bought a 4th and 5th. By number 6, I realized I wasn't getting a lift. 'Cause it was Senka. Oh, it was 97% unclean. All I got is Senka coffee. All I need is some caffeine. Oh, Folgers gets my mind awake, and butternut helps me see. But all this Senka makes me do is have to take a peek. Drinking Senka. It's 97% unclean. All I got is Senka coffee. All I need is some caffeine. Oh, so hear me, all you coffee freaks. Don't drink any Senka at all. You'll spend your lifetime fast asleep inside a bathroom stall. Oh, it's 97% unclean. All I got is Senka coffee. All I need is caffeine.
Classic. Many thanks to all who helped put this together, especially the LCC staff and Pastor Emily, Teresa and Clark, and Andrea and Rob, and Kristen and Adam, and all the submitters, and you for attending and for our time here to remember Brent. Now let us go forth and meet some faces in the chat rooms. The banquet continues right here.